this the beautiful MDRT homecoming?
Something.
Did you love yesterday? You're gonna love today also. I can't tell you how excited I am to see all you beautiful people. Whether you're the President of these United States or here this morning as a first-time qualifier, when it comes to communicating, we all got one thing in common. One thing, that is, according to Bert Decker. Not only is he a best-selling author of books on communicating, but Bert has been recognized as an expert in the field. You may have seen him on the Today Show analyzing technique for each of the presidential debates. You also might have seen him on 2020, or you may have read about him in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, or Business Week. Mr. Decker can demonstrate that you've got to be believed to be heard. You may discover that some of the components critical to being believed have nothing to do with what we say. Let's invite him out so you can see for yourself. Please welcome Mr. Bert Decker.
Thank you, Lyle. Good morning. I'm delighted to be here at the $1 Million Roundtable this morning. We're going to be talking about a subject of importance to all of us, communications. As you know, we all have habits that help us and habits that hinder us. We also have habits of perception, of how we see others and how we see ourselves. We're going to be talking about our inner and outer perceptions and how we can alter them. In the process, I'm going to give you specific options and tools you can use to become more effective communicators. The content of my presentation is divided as follows. First, what counts in communications. Second, the skills of personal impact. Third, how to be believed to be heard. And fourth, the 3 secrets of the great communicators. Also, in order to be effective, you must have the undivided attention of the person or persons you are talking to. To communicate effectively, you must get people to listen. Why isn't anybody listening right now? I mean, I better just take this speech and tear it up if that's the way. Yeah! Good morning again. Listen, why wasn't there laughter earlier? You know, I think the reason is we expect that kind of thing too much in a business setting. We see people reading speeches too much, not making connection. And let me ask you another thing. How quickly, if I was really going to read that content to you, how quickly did you tune out? 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Our minds work very fast in communications. People make judgments of you. How are you coming across? You see, there was a lot of distance. Reading a speech, hiding behind lecterns, it's okay for 5,000 people at the $1 Million Roundtable, but it isn't okay one-on-one selling, and it isn't okay not making connection. Because communicating is a contact sport. And that's what the next half hour is about. Communicating is a contact sport where you have to reach people, you have to connect with them. You can't just cite facts and figures. This is a working session. Okay, and everybody remembers the 4 things that I mentioned up there, right? No? How many remember? Let's go for 3. How many remember 3 of the things I mentioned? I don't see any hands yet. 2. Isn't that something? Look, there's a hand for 2. Okay, this is a real question. How many remember just 1 of the 4 things? Just 1, show of hands.
Good morning.
Good morning, yes. But take a look, folks. I was up there a scant 3 minutes ago, and I mentioned 4 things, and maybe 100 people out of 5,000 remember just 1. What does it say for our facts and figures? Not too much if you're boring, if you don't connect with people. That is the key. You got to connect with people. So I'm going to remind you again of our agenda. There are 4 things, but I'm going to visualize them, and we're going to go over each time. The first is what counts in communications. It's not necessarily the way we've been taught. I'm going to spend a lot of time on that because it's critically important. Many of us don't conduct our business that way. Secondly, the skills of personal impact, of how to make a connection with people. How do you just get across? Third, how to be believed to be heard, how to get those skills. And fourth, I'll close with the 3 secrets of the most effective communicators. Those people, leaders in your profession, in the insurance business, in selling, in management, in politics, in government, people who have good communications and connect with people have 3 characteristics in common. And I'll close on that. So let's get to what counts, what's most important in communications. When you are speaking to somebody, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's to a large group like this, there are only 3 things going on. Your verbal, the content of your message, the vocal, which is the voice, all aspects of your voice, the resonance, everything about your voice that carries that message, and the visual. And that is what people see of you. That's all you have in the communication process. Now what I'd like you to do, and I'm going to ask you for a show of hands on this, I'd like you to take those 3 things, the verbal content, vocal, which is the voice carrying the content, and the visual is what you see. What's most important for believability, for persuasion? Well, wait a minute. This is a show of hands, not speak out. Okay, for those who think the verbal content is either most or equal importance for believability and persuasion, show of hands, just so we can, well, that's not too many hands out there, but it's a few. How about vocal? Most or equal importance, the vocal component. Okay, that's a few more. That's maybe about 10, 15%. And visual, the great majority. Okay, that's the right answer. But I don't think you know how important the figures are of those weights and how important that visual is. And I'm going to give you the right answer in just a second here. But first I'd like to do a quick exercise. Make a circle with your thumb and forefinger, if you would. Put it out in front of you. Put it above your head. Put it out to the side. Put it on your chin. 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 Oh, this is the chin. Yeah. A quick survey, about 75–80% of people will do what you see, not what is said. Isn't it important to know the importance of that visual? And that there is a difference? Some people do think verbal is most important. Some think vocal. But it's critically important to know what it really is. Here are the figures. This is from a study done by Professor Albert Moravian. Take a look. 55% of the impact of the inconsistent message is on the visual. So if you're giving an inconsistent message, if you are reading a speech in a dull monotone, if you're not relating to your audience, whether that audience is 1 or 1,000, then you won't connect. Because with an inconsistent message, the visual will be seen and it will not get across to people, so your words are blocked. I'm going to show a visual example of that. Lyle had mentioned before, I was on the Today Show before each of the 3 presidential and vice presidential debates, saying who won based on behavior the morning after each of the debates. I want to show a short clip from one of those. This was on President Clinton's performance in the second debate, which was a critical debate and I think a turning point. And then I'm going to show another clip of President Clinton. What I'd like you to do here is put politics aside for a minute. This is on behavior, okay? We're talking about communications here. President Clinton is a master communicator. He has overcome many odds to get elected, and even now, although, look, anybody now would have problems with the things going on. But leaving politics aside, take a look at this clip, and then I'm going to show another one that's going to be a little bit different. Here's President Clinton on the Today Show.
From NBC News, this is Today with Bryant Gumbel and Catherine Curry.
The candidates may have stuck to the issues last night, but who will stick in the minds of the voters? Our communications expert, Bert Decker, believes that making a strong personal connection with voters is what really counts in these debates. We welcome back the author of You've Got to Be Believed to Be Heard. Good morning, Bert.
Hi, Stone.
Who'd you like last night?
Well, it's not a question of liking. I think that, as everybody has indicated, Clinton has won. The key question in my mind, and I think people should look at, is why. This is the debate of the personal connection. And Clinton was masterful at making that personal connection, and Bush was not. And we could see that in many of the instances, particularly the use of the format, because Clinton really used it well in connecting out there with the audience.
Let's take a look at a clip of Bill Clinton from last night.
In my state, when people lose their jobs, there's a good chance I'll know them by their names. When a factory closes, I know the people who ran it. When the businesses go bankrupt, I know them.
There he was talking not only about his own personal experience, but what he was doing behaviorally. He's going out to that person in that audience and talking to them. I mean, he got rid of the programmed moniker that he had from the last debate very effectively, I thought.
Can Bill Clinton improve on this performance?
Yeah, he can pronounce chameleon correctly.
If you remember in that debate, chameleon was chameleon, and I don't think there are two pronunciations, but that was that reference. There was something else that happened in that debate that those of you who saw it might remember. Remember President Bush looking at his watch several times? Tom Brokaw, right after the debate, said, oh, that he was just wanting to find out what time it is. That's not true. He wanted to be out of there, and he was just checking his watch. He wasn't doing well. Low energy, didn't connect, an incongruent message. By the way, here's a tip. If you are ever in a communication setting to a large audience, any kind of audience, never look at your watch. What happens if you have everybody on one track, they're with you, and you stop and look at your watch to see what time it is? Everybody else wants to know what time it is. And so whatever track you're on, they're going to go off on another track, and they may not do it out of politeness. So just take your timepiece and put it on the lectern or podium or wherever, your overhead projector, wherever you are, so that you can just check the time so you know what time it is, but don't look at the time. Back to Clinton. I want to show you another clip. In the debates, he connected with people. He walked out to that woman in the clip you just saw. In this clip, this was 6 days before his State of the Union message. And here, when he gives the State of the Union message, he is going to be saying, we're raising taxes, folks. Well, 6 days before, he was in a town hall meeting, and the lady asked him a question about, how about your promise to not raise taxes for the middle class? And he has to get around that some way, because he knows what he's going to say in 6 days. What I'd like you to watch here is he's still a great communicator. He still gets up, he goes out, he talks to the woman. But look at the subtleties. Look at the eye communication. Look at the nod of the head, the subtleties that really count in communication. Take a look.
Mr. President? Well, first of all, I did put out a plan which didn't contain a middle-class tax increase, but I also repeatedly said, and I said in the debates in front of 100 million people, I refuse to say, read my lips, that's not responsible.
Did you notice there the eyes just glancing down, the nod of the head? These are subtle things, but people read them. They are part of our communications. When you give an incongruent message, particularly when you're under pressure, and it could be pressure of one-on-one, it could be a job interview, it could be having to fire somebody who's your best friend. It's not just the numbers of people, it's just pressure. I loved what Charles Barkley said last week about pressure. Somebody asked him about his supreme self-confidence. He said, oh, I don't know what that is. All I know is that pressure is something you should put in tires. Well, it's a great line, but for most of us, pressure is something that when we get up in front of others, we just compress. And we give an incongruent, inconsistent message, and our vocal and visual doesn't connect. And it's critically important that it connect, because those are the elements that reach our emotions at the unconscious level. That's what believability comes from. People buy on emotion and justify with fact. People buy on emotion and justify with fact. And you of the $1 Million Round Table know this intuitively, unconsciously, if not consciously. Because you connect with people. You have to be here. You have to be successful. And those elements are conducted at the unconscious level by many different things. People buy an emotion, justify with fact. They're the subtle things. I remember often when I talk, I have a 5-year-old granddaughter, Ashley, and she's a little tyke. She's down here, and I heard of this once, and then I tried it, and I don't do it enough, but what I will often do now is just get down on my knees like this and talk to little Ashley. And it makes such a difference talking to a little person at this level, because you're talking and connecting emotionally. Do you realize to them we're giants? They just see these sea of legs. Well, at all levels, personal relationships, business relationships, it's essential to connect with people. And I want to show you another clip to show how this happens at the highest levels. This is a clip of Admiral James Stockdale. Yeah, I thought that that might happen. But this first clip's going to surprise you, because Admiral Stockdale did not do well in the debate. But he started out differently than your image and impression is if you saw the debate or if you read about it afterwards. Take a look at how Admiral Stockdale started.
Who am I? Why am I here?
That was great. He connected, he had humor. I was in a hotel room looking intently, because the next day I was going to be on national television in front of millions of people having to say who won the debate and how was he. I'd never seen him before. So I looked, I said, oh, this is terrific. We have Dan Quayle, that should be interesting. We have Al Gore, that should be not as interesting, but at least there. And politics aside now, behavior, a little staunch. And then we have this new guy that we don't know about. Great. 20 seconds later, it changed. And I'm going to show you another clip that happened right after that, and then it continued in this manner. And look at how short this clip is to change our perceptions. Here we go.
Better than anybody in the world. I know some things about the Vietnam War better than anybody in the world. And I know how governments, how American governments can be
Oh, that almost hurts to see that. See, the problem there is this is not a man of confidence and certainty when he's up in front of others. But he's a brilliant man. He's a published author. He's a member of the Hoover Institution. He's an authentic war hero, and he is somebody deserving of our respect. But when he is communicating, he does not connect. He doesn't make contact with people at that emotional level, and we don't want to follow him as a leader. That certainty is critical. It's confidence and certainty that's critical to our communications. And there's a reason that this happens. I'd like to just briefly take you through how our mind actually works. We have, most of the people think of our brain as the cerebral cortex. I call that the new brain, because in the cerebral cortex, that is the part of our brain where it's at the conscious level, it's analytical, it's rational, it's the newest and most developed part of the human brain. But the problem is we can't just get our facts from our cerebral cortex to somebody else's. That's what we want to do, but it has to pass through the first brain first. The first brain is right inside of that cerebral cortex. It is physiologically real. We all have it. It is an older brain. It is unconscious, and it's the emotional brain. It's made up of the limbic system and the brainstem. And you might think, oh, that's interesting, but so what? Well, here's the so what about it. Our visual communications, our eyes are connected, the nerve pathways, to go through the first brain first. And it serves as a gateway, and it will either enhance our message, getting it to the new brain, so we get those facts and figures through, or it will block it if we don't stimulate the emotional brain, the first brain. So if we are dull and boring, or if we are not liked, that first brain is going to block our message getting to where we really want it to go, which is in the conscious new brain. And the fact is, all of our senses, all of our 5 senses are connected to that first brain. So we have to reach the first brain emotionally. We have to connect with people at that emotional level. That's why people buy an emotion and justify with fact. You have to have the facts and figures, but you have to connect first. I'll give a couple of examples of that, of the sensory input. For all of you, the smell sense goes into the first brain first, and I think if I mention a few things that, like the wet forest floor, or the salty spray off Cape Cod, or a perfume or a barbecue sauce, or some kind of smell, I'll bet you all of you have had the experience of just smelling something and it immediately evoking a memory, an emotional memory from the past. Haven't you had that experience? There are different kinds of things, but we've all had that experience in some way. I want to share an experience of the auditory sense of my own, and this might strike the first brain of some of you because you might have had a similar experience as well. When I was 4 years old, my mother died of cancer, and I have no conscious memory of my mother. Now, a 4-year-old should have some conscious memory, and obviously I blocked it, of course, because I can't remember anything consciously about my mother. But she was a great classical pianist, and I heard her play a lot, and every time I hear Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto, I always remember her. I well up inside. Even now, in front of 5,000 people, it still strikes the same chords. That's the first brain. It is unconscious, and it is very, very powerful. And it is essential to our communications. It is essential to reach people emotionally, to get across whatever it is you want to get across. Now, I'd like to apply this to the personal skills, the skills of personal impact. What are those skills that make up this connection? There are basically 9 skills, 9 areas that we have found in our training sessions and that we train in that are specific to the skills that we have connecting not anything to do with our content, but to do with all of those various behaviors that we have. So the 9 skills we have, the first and foremost is eye communication. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these. There's a handout, by the way. On the way out, there's a handout at the side and that you can get at the break that has more on the new brain, first brain, and also these 9 skills. Eye communication is the most important from the sense of in one-on-one communication and large-scale communication, you have to connect, look at people. Be involved, not stare, not intimidate, but just connect and look. And the natural self, number 9, is also, in a way, as important because it wraps all the others up. All we have to do is be ourselves. Be authentic and be ourselves. I'd like to cover just a couple of those, though, just to give an idea of what I mean about the importance of the skills of personal impact. Let's take the area of gestures and facial animation. That's an area of our physical energy that people see, and remember the importance of that visual. Whenever we get up in front of a group, we don't have a lectern to hang on and hide behind. What happens is we do something with our hands that's comfortable to us, but not very comfortable to the audience. Kind of inhibiting gestures. This one's the hand wash. You all might have seen, I'll run through a couple of these. A lot of seminars are conducted with the Sisters of Mercy. You ever see that? Now, the most common is the fig leaf. You see it all the time. In our training sessions, we get about 60% of the people of all the inhibiting gestures you get, most have the fig leaf. Now, I want to tell you one that I've only seen one time, but it'll really make the point that I want to make. It's a variation on the fig leaf. We had a gentleman come into one of our courses, and at the beginning we videotaped for 2 minutes, just something very simple. You talk about yourself, and we give him some cues to talk about, and then you take it into private coaching and see yourself. Well, when he got into private coaching, he immediately named himself this name because when he stood up in front of the group for 2 minutes, he called himself the Fig Leaf Flasher. Now say I had something really important to say. It's no big thing. But boy, is that distracting. And you also might think, well, why is he doing that? He must know he's doing that, but he had no idea. It's all at that unconscious level. It's at the first brain level. It's part of the brainstem, the physiological system. We unconsciously have these habits that we don't know we're doing. Now, he had immediate spontaneous remission. When he saw himself, he never did that again. But he had no idea because he didn't have the feedback to see what his habit was. Let me take another one. This is in the area of language and non-words. Many of us in business, particularly when we're on the phone, are afflicted with non-words, ums and ahs. It can be very distracting. I'd like to show you a clip of somebody. This is 7 seconds long. I'd like you'll immediately recognize who it is. It's somebody under pressure, and see and hear if he is telling the truth, if he is believable. Let's take a look.
And we will have more precise bomb damage assessments at that time.
Would you buy a used car from this man? Now here, you notice the eyes are going down, not looking out to the press, which they should be, but also the ums and ahs. I first heard that on the radio, and the live broadcast, I said, my gosh, coming from where I'm coming, really distracted by the ums and ahs. I got a recording, 3 minutes and 11 seconds, in his opening statement, 59 ums and ahs. And that believability plummets when you don't just pause, have a confidence and a certainty. And the ums and ahs break that. You can leave a pause right in the middle of a sentence. And nobody's going to go away. You may not even know what you're going to say next, what the next word out of your mouth is going to be. And all you have to do is pause. And whatever that word is, it sounds like it's the Sermon on the Mount, and it's exactly what you expected to say. The problem is, leaving pauses is very uncomfortable to us, because it's a new habit if we've never heard ourselves leaving pauses. So I'd like to move into how we get to be believed to be heard. What do we do about these personal skills? How do we gain access to them? How do we get feedback? What do we do with these habits? Because all those personal skills are actually habits. I'd like to do another little exercise with you to show that. Would you all clasp your hands like this and interlock all your fingers, all them together? Okay, now take them apart, and without putting your hands back together, if you had your right thumb over your left, raise your right hand. If you had your left thumb over your right, raise your left hand. And if you couldn't remember, raise both hands. Okay, that seems to be the majority on the last one. Here's what it means. If you had your right thumb over your left, you are sexy. But if you had your left thumb over your right, you are sneaky. But if you couldn't remember, and that's the majority of you, you are sneaky about sex. This is the $1 Million Roundtable, after all. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding about which means what. I don't know. Poetic license on that. But I did it for a reason. And here's the reason. What I'd like you to do now is, you only had one way to clasp your hands together. I'd like you to do it the opposite way. If you had right over left, do left over right. And interlock all your fingers the opposite way. It's very difficult, isn't it? Hard, uncomfortable. You see, you have a habit of, actually thousands of physical habits like that one, and you have no choice about how you clasp your hands together. And if I ask you, you just do it one way. You would not do it the other way. Now, according to Maxwell Maltz, he wrote Psycho-Cybernetics, and I think he's absolutely right on this, that there is 21 days to change a habit. And where you want to change your habits is in your communication skills, not in those habits that, don't spend time practicing the other way. It doesn't mean anything. But if you have the fig leaf or the flasher, you might practice that habit. But to do that, you have to get feedback. And that is the critical element. You have to know what your habits are, know what those personal skills are. There are 3 types of feedback. The first is people feedback. From what I suggest you do, every chance you get feedback from others on the 3 positive things you're doing and the 3 distractions. Get balanced feedback, and just get 3. It's a forced choice. It's invaluable. You will get a preponderance of information just from people. It doesn't cost anything, and some of it you can throw out because it's subjective. Some might be off the wall, but you'll get most people telling you how you come across to them. Secondly, audio feedback. Your voice. Remember that the 38% in the figures I gave you on the voice? Take away the visual, and that's your phone work. How many of you do business on the phone? Yeah. That's not enough hands, but that's all of us. When we're on the phone, most of our emotional content comes through our voice. Well, find out how you sound. If you have voicemail, and most of you have voicemail, or an answering service, but particularly with voicemail, send yourself a message so that you can find out how you sound. And whether you have ums and ahs, or ands, or your nose. And then practice sending yourself a real message. Send a message to somebody else, dial yourself in, and then practice leaving a pause. It'll feel uncomfortable, but remember, you have control. Nobody's going to interrupt you. And you will hear that pause later on when you hear the feedback and say, gee, that sounded pretty good. And you'll get used to it. And in 21 days, you'll be able to leave pauses. All these are habits. What you want to do in habits, you want to sow a thought and you will reap an act. Sow an act and you will reap a habit. Sow a habit and you will reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. And when you consider your communications, you're building into an effective communicator by continuously working on your habits. Now, the third area of feedback that you have got to use, if you haven't already, is video feedback. If you don't have a camcorder, I suggest you get one. Observe behavior changes. And when you are able to see yourself as others see you, it is incredible the impact that it has. And the good news is, we are all better than we think we are. Not the first time you see yourself. You say, who's that stranger up on the screen? But once you get to see yourself several times, you'll find, gosh, I'm not so bad. Gosh, I do, I'm witty, or I move around, or I have gestures, or I look at people. Get on feedback in any way that you can. Camcorder, the prices are coming down. I suggest you get one. Do a video training. Your company has video access. Practice a speech before you go on, but do it continuously. Get feedback, look at your habits, and you will gain the personal skills. And finally, I'd like to close with the 3 secrets of the great communicators. Those people who are effective in any walk of life. There are 3 characteristics that I found that they have. The first is being authentic. Authenticity, being who you are. I don't think there is anybody you know who is really a great communicator and a great leader and a great salesperson who is a copy of anybody else. In practicing, one might emulate somebody, but ultimately, when your real self is excited, enthused, and confident, that's all there is about communication, being authentic. The second is humor. And I don't mean telling jokes. As a matter of fact, I don't recommend that people tell jokes. I don't tell jokes at all. I'm a lousy joke teller. If you really tell jokes well, and that's about 1 in 50 I found, then fine, you can use that. But I don't tell jokes, but we had a few laughs. Not enough, but a few. And anytime I get one, I try to milk it. Because humor is humanization. It is asides. It's find the things that make you laugh, that you connect with, and your audiences will connect with you with that too. Whether it's an audience of 1 or an audience of 1,000. Because when you connect with humor, that is a likability that is absolutely critical. We don't buy from people that we don't like in any relationship selling. All of you here who are successful, who are salespeople, and we're all salespeople, that likability largely comes from humor. And if somebody doesn't like you, they're not going to buy from you. Maybe a one-time item, but not after that. Humanization is humor, critically important. And the third is risk. All of these ideas don't really mean a lot unless you take them out and you risk. You make yourself vulnerable. It's not easy to get feedback. It's not easy to push yourself to higher levels of tension in speaking to larger groups. But I urge you to do it. Take the risk. You're all successful, you might be comfortable. But if so, remember what Helen Keller said. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. If you will risk, you will gain. Make yourself vulnerable. I'd like to show one last clip of a man who I think shows all 3 of these secrets: authenticity, humor, and also vulnerability on national television. Take a look at how he handles hard information and delivers it believably, and how he uses humor spontaneously, and how he opens himself up and becomes vulnerable. Here is General Norman Schwarzkopf.
What are your impressions of Saddam Hussein as a military strategist?
First of all, if we thought it would have been such an easy fight, we definitely would not have stocked 60 days worth of supplies on these log bases. So, as I've told you all for a very, very long time, it is very, very important for a military commander never to assume away the capabilities of his enemy. And when you're facing an enemy that is over 500,000 strong, has the reputation that they've had of fighting for 8 years, being combat-hardened veterans, had the number of tanks and the type of equipment they had, you don't assume away anything. So we certainly did not expect it to go this way. As far as Saddam Hussein being a great military strategist, he is neither a strategist, nor is he schooled in the operational art, nor is he a tactician, nor is he a general, nor is he as a soldier. Other than that, he's a great military man. I want you to know that.
Do you think about him at all now?
Yeah, I probably thought about him more since I've been over here than I have in many, many years. I mean, many times I've just thought that, if he was looking at me now, I knew he'd be proud.
There are certain questions I ask you, like about your father, and the tears come to your eyes.
I didn't know it showed.
The old picture of generals. Generals don't cry. Generals don't get tears in their eyes.
Sure they do.
That is a man of confidence, of prestige, and he didn't have to open himself up like that. None of us need to speak like General Schwarzkopf. nor should we. All we have to do is be ourselves. But we have to be able to open ourselves up, to take risks, to be as effective as we can be. Each time you ask more of yourself than you think you're able to give, and then manage to give, you will grow in communicating and in life. Thank you very much.